Welcome to African Folktales Hub by Chris. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on your notification. My children, draw closer and listen well, for this is not a story meant to please the ears. It is a story meant to warn the heart. In the old days, in the village of Umwara, we believe that the ancestors never slept. Even when the night was thick and the moon hid its face, they watched. They listened. They remembered. Umwara was a quiet place, built on red earth and old rules. People greeted one another with respect, and no child dared raise a voice against a parent. It was said that a child's blood was tied to their mother's breath, and to break that bond was to invite darkness. Many doubted these words as time passed. Young people laughed and called them stories for old men. But the ancestors waited. They always wait. This tale is about a woman named Nwanyabwife and her only daughter, Amara. It is about shame that grew like weeds and love that suffered in silence. It is about a door that was locked and a cry that was ignored. Most of all, it is about what happens when a child decides to erase where she came from. I did not witness everything with my eyes, but I saw the end. And the end was enough to teach me that blood can never be hidden, and roots can never be denied without a price. Nwanyabwife was not always blind. In her younger days, she was known across nearby villages as a strong trader. She carried heavy baskets on her head and walked long roads without complaint. Her laughter was loud, and her hands were always busy. When sickness took her husband early, people thought she would break. But she did not. She worked harder. She raised her daughter alone, feeding her with honest sweat. Then one rainy season, fever struck Nwanyabwife. When it passed, the light never returned to her eyes. Darkness became her companion. Many pitied her, but she refused to beg. She learned the sound of footsteps, the shape of walls, and the smell of cooking fires. She still guided Amara with gentle words and firm discipline. Amara grew up watching her mother feel her way through life, and at first, she admired her strength. But as Amara grew older, admiration slowly turned into discomfort. Other children whispered. Visitors stared. Nwanyabwife remained kind, always blessing her daughter and thanking the ancestors for each new day. She believed blindness was a test, not a curse. She did not know that the real danger was not the darkness in her eyes, but the darkness forming in her daughter's heart. Amara grew into a girl everyone noticed. Her skin was smooth, her smile bright, and her voice soft like evening rain. People praised her beauty and said she would marry well. But beauty can be a sharp knife when mixed with pride. As Amara began visiting nearby towns, she saw girls with fine clothes and proud mothers. She returned home with questions she never asked before. Why was her mother like this? Why did they live in a small house? Why did people lower their voices when they passed them? Slowly, shame took root. Amara began avoiding walking beside her mother in public. When friends visited, she asked Nwanyabwife to stay inside. Nwanyabwife noticed the distance, though she could not see it. A mother's heart does not need eyes. She felt it in the silence, in the way Amara no longer held her hand. Still, she said nothing. She believed patience could heal all wounds. At night, she prayed quietly, asking the ancestors to guide her daughter's steps. Amara, however, prayed for something else. She prayed to escape. She wanted a life with no reminders of struggle. Each prayer pushed her further away from the woman who gave her life, and each step away tightened the rope that would one day pull her down. The day Amara truly turned her back began like any other. A group of well-dressed visitors arrived in Umwara from the city. They spoke of opportunities, of marriage, of moving forward. Amara listened with shining eyes. When they asked about her family, she hesitated. Then she said it. My mother died long ago. The lie tasted bitter, but it also tasted like freedom. From that day, Amara practiced forgetting. She stopped mentioning her mother. She stopped bringing visitors home. She dressed better, spoke differently, and corrected anyone who linked her to poverty. Nwanyabwife sensed a change. The house felt colder. Meals were shorter. Words became fewer. One evening, she asked gently, "My child, have I offended you?" Amara snapped back, her voice sharp with hidden anger. "You offend me just by being seen," she wanted to say, but instead she stayed silent. Silence became her shield. That night, Nwanyabwife cried quietly, her tears soaking into the mat. She did not curse her daughter. She only whispered blessings. Somewhere beyond the trees, the ancestors listened. They do not interfere quickly. They allow choices to grow heavy before they fall. As Amra's connections grew, so did her fear. She feared that one careless moment would expose her lie. She feared that someone would see her guiding a blind woman and laugh. Fear makes wicked plans seem wise. Amara decided her mother must disappear from sight. She told neighbors that Nwanyawife was visiting distant relatives. She moved her mother into a small back room with no window, claiming it was quieter. Nwanyawife trusted her daughter and followed without complaint. She felt the walls, counted her steps, and sat where she was placed. Days passed. Meals came less often. The room smelled damp. Amara locked the door for safety, she said. The sound of the lock echoed loudly in the old woman's ears. Still, she prayed. She told herself love sometimes looked like pain. Outside, Amara smiled more than ever. She walked freely, spoke boldly, and felt light. At night, however, she dreamed of knocking on doors that would not open. She woke with sweat on her skin and blamed it on stress. She did not know that every lock turned against blood echoes in the spirit world. The ancestors began to stir. Weeks passed, and the village elders began to dream strange dreams. In these dreams, a blind woman sat behind a locked door, calling softly. Some heard her singing old songs. Others smelled decay and sorrow. They woke uneasy but said nothing. Meanwhile, Nwanyabwife's strength faded. She rationed her food and drank water sparingly. When hunger twisted her stomach, she pressed her hand to her chest and prayed for Amra's happiness. "Let my suffering build her future," she whispered. That prayer shook the ground. Amra's life bloomed quickly. A wealthy man noticed her. Talks of marriage began. People praised her rise. Yet strange things followed her. Food spoiled in her hands. Dogs howled at her door. She brushed it off as coincidence. One night, she heard footsteps pacing outside her room, slow and careful, like a blind person counting steps. She sat up shaking, then laughed at herself. Guilt, she told herself, was making her imagine things. But guilt is a seed. When watered by silence, it grows into monsters. The ancestors do not punish without warning. They whisper first. Nwanyawife died quietly, alone in the dark. No cry announced her passing. At dawn, the locked door swung open by itself. Neighbors found her body curled on the mat, her face calm. News spread like fire. Questions followed. Where was Amara? Why was the old woman locked away? Amara arrived late, pretending shock. She cried loudly, but her tears came too easily. The elders demanded a proper burial, but rituals were rushed, careless. That night, the drums beat by themselves. Wine knocked over pots. Amara fell ill. Her sleep vanished. When she closed her eyes, she saw darkness pressing in. The shrine priest, Ezenwa, called the elders. "Blood has been dishonored," he said. "Truth must be spoken." Amara denied everything at first. But denial cannot stand before ancestral eyes. Her illness worsened. Her beauty faded. Dreams turned into punishments. Finally, before the gathered village, Amara collapsed and confessed. Her words spilled like poison. The elders listened in silence. The ancestors had already decided. Forgiveness was not theirs to give. Balance had to be restored. Amara lost everything she chased. The wealthy man withdrew. Friends avoided her. Her body weakened, mirroring the suffering she caused. Rituals failed. The shrine rejected offerings. Ezenwa spoke the final truth. The ancestors do not seek revenge. They seek balance. Amara was left to live with the weight of her actions. She wandered, poor and alone, feeling walls she could not see, guided by regret instead of love. Nwanyabwife's name was restored, honored, spoken with respect. From that day, parents in Umwara told this story to their children. They said, "Do not be ashamed of your roots. Do not lock away your blood. My children, remember this. A mother's sacrifice is never invisible. The ancestors see what we hide. And when they rise, no door can keep them out." After the confession, Umwara did not return to peace. Silence became heavier than noise. People avoided Amara, not out of anger, but fear. It was said her shadow felt cold. Each night, she heard her mother's footsteps, slow and careful, circling her mat. When she reached out, there was nothing. Her sickness deepened. Food tasted like ash. Water could not quench her thirst. She visited herbalists, but their leaves turned black in her hands. Esenwa warned her that punishment had begun, not because of hate, but because truth had been buried too long. Amara tried to sleep, but dreams dragged her into the dark room she once locked. She felt the walls, the hunger, the fear. She woke screaming, clawing at doors that were already open. Outside, elders poured libations for Nwanya's wife, begging forgiveness for the village's silence. They admitted they had seen signs and ignored them. That night, rain fell without clouds. Thunder spoke without lightning. The ancestors were not finished. When balance is broken, it demands payment from more than one soul. As Amara weakened, Amwara itself began to suffer. Crops failed in healthy soil. Children cried at night, pointing at corners where nothing stood. Goats refused to enter Amara's compound. The elders gathered again, troubled. Esenwa entered the shrine and stayed for 3 days. When he returned, his voice shook. He said the ancestors demanded remembrance, not sacrifice. Nwanya's suffering had been unseen, and now it must be seen by all. A cleansing ritual was announced. The locked room was opened fully for the first time. Inside, people found scratch marks on the wall and a broken bowl. Many wept openly. Amara was brought to sit inside the room she created. She trembled as the door closed, though it remained unlocked. She screamed, begging forgiveness from a mother who no longer breathed. That night, the village slept without dreams for the first time in weeks. In the spirit world, the ancestors listened. But listening did not mean mercy yet. Days passed after the ritual, and Amwara slowly breathed again. Crops lifted their heads. Children slept peacefully. But Amara did not heal. Her punishment was not death, but memory. She remembered every moment of shame, every lie, every locked step. She began to lose her sight, little by little. First faces blurred, then paths vanished. When darkness finally claimed her eyes, she cried louder than ever before. Esenwa spoke softly, "Now you will walk the road you forced upon another." The village did not mock her. They helped her, fed her, guided her steps. But respect never returned. Amara learned the shape of walls, the sound of footsteps, the weight of silence. At night, she spoke to her mother's spirit, apologizing until her voice broke. Sometimes, she felt a hand on her shoulder. Sometimes, only cold air. The ancestors had balanced the scales. They did not destroy Amara. They transformed her lesson into flesh. Years later, Amara became known as the blind woman who warned children. She sat by the roadside, telling them to honor their parents. Her voice carried sorrow and truth. She never married. She never left Amwara. Each market day, she poured water on the earth for her mother and whispered thanks for life. The elders taught the story carefully, never adding lies. They said Nwanya's blindness was not her weakness, but her daughter's blindness of heart was. Amwara rebuilt its values slowly. Doors were left open. Elders listened to dreams. Children were taught that shame is more dangerous than poverty. And when night fell and drums rested, the ancestors returned to silence. They were satisfied, not because pain was given, but because truth was restored. So, my children, that is why we still tell this story. Not to scare you, but to guide you. Blood remembers. Roots hold. A mother's suffering never fades into dust. When you feel shame rising, remember Amara. When pride whispers lies, remember the locked door. The ancestors do not rush, but they do not forget. And when they rise to teach balance, not cruelty. Carry your past with honor, for it carried you first. Even after peace returned to Amwara, the story did not fade. The ancestors allowed time to pass so the lesson could deepen. Amara's blindness sharpened her other senses. She learned to hear truth in footsteps and lies in silence. Children often gathered around her, curious and afraid. She told them how pride begins as a small voice and grows into a command. She spoke of how shame poisons love before it shows its teeth. Each word was heavy with regret. At night, she dreamed of her mother not as a victim, but as a young woman laughing under the sun. Those dreams hurt more than nightmares. They reminded Amara of what she destroyed. The elders watched her closely. They believed the ancestors were still measuring her heart. When Amara shared her food with beggars, the wind felt warmer. When she skipped prayers, storms returned. Balance was still being watched. Amwara learned that punishment does not always end quickly. Sometimes, it lives as memory. One season, a traveler arrived from far away. He was blind and carried a staff carved with symbols of old clans. When he heard Amara's story, he bowed his head. He said blindness could either harden the heart or soften it. That night, the two spoke until dawn. Amara confessed everything again, not out of fear, but sorrow. The traveler taught her ancestral songs meant for healing, not cleansing. When she sang them, the air felt lighter. The elders noticed that Amara no longer cursed herself aloud. She accepted her fate as teaching, not torture. The ancestors responded quietly. For the first time since Nwanyabwife's death, Amara dreamed without pain. She saw her mother sitting peacefully, facing the rising sun. No words were spoken, but forgiveness rested in the silence. When Amara woke, tears fell freely, not burning, but gentle. The ancestors had closed one eye of judgment and opened one of mercy. From that day, Amara's illness stopped worsening. Though her sight never returned, her strength slowly did. She worked small tasks, weaving mats and guiding children across paths. People began greeting her again, not with fear, but respect. Ezenwa announced that the ancestors had accepted the lesson. He reminded the village that mercy does not erase consequences. Amara would carry her blindness forever, just as she once forced darkness upon another. But she would not be destroyed. That is how ancestors teach, not with fire, but with reflection. Nwanyabwife's grave was rebuilt, marked with care. Offerings were made each year. Her name became a symbol of quiet sacrifice. Mothers in Umwara prayed differently after that. They prayed not just for their children's success, but for their gratitude. As years passed, Umwara prospered again. Disputes were settled early. Elders listened more than they spoke. Children learned that wealth without honor rots quickly. Amara aged gently, her hair turning gray. She laughed sometimes, softly. Those who knew her story said her laughter sounded earned. When she finally died, it was peaceful. The ancestors allowed proper rites. Drums beat slowly, respectfully. No storms followed. No strange dreams came. Balance had been fully restored. Blood had spoken. Truth had answered. That is why, my children, we still say, never lock away your roots. Never trade blood for pride. The ancestors may wait, but they never walk away. Carry this story in your heart, and you will walk safely on the earth. Long after Amara's passing, travelers still asked about her story. Elders never rushed to answer. They waited until the fire burned low and night settled deep. Then they spoke slowly, reminding listeners that not every punishment comes with chains. Some arrive as lessons that walk beside you forever. They said Amara's blindness was not placed on her by anger, but by truth. She was forced to finally see what she refused to before. The ancestors did not steal her future. They reshaped it. Umwara learned that justice does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers until the soul listens. Mothers began to tell their children bedtime stories differently. They spoke of sacrifice more than success. Fathers reminded daughters and sons that shame grows where gratitude dies. No child in Umwara ever again claimed their parent was dead while they still breathed. Fear kept them honest at first, but wisdom kept them faithful. The ancestors had planted understanding where pride once ruled. Each year, during the season of remembrance, villagers poured water for Nwanyabwife. They spoke her name aloud, so it would never fade. They said she saw more in darkness than many did with sight. Her quiet prayers were believed to have softened the ancestors' final judgment. Love, even when wounded, still protected. Ezenwa grew old and weak. Before his death, he warned the village one last time. Do not test what watches you, he said. The ancestors are not cruel, but they are exact. His words became law. Disrespect toward parents became the greatest shame of all. Children who misbehaved were not beaten harshly. They were made to sit and listen to Amara's story. Many cried before the tale ended. Some hugged their mothers afterward. That was how Umwara healed, not through fear alone, but understanding. And so, the land remained balanced. Rain came in season. Crops grew strong. Peace held firm. The ancestors rested again, their work complete. They had reminded the living of an old truth: blood cannot be denied, and love should never be hidden behind locks. Now you know why I tell this story. Not to frighten you, but to guide you. When pride tells you to forget your roots, remember Amara. When shame tells you to hide your blood, remember the locked door. The ancestors see what the eyes refuse to see. And when they rise not to destroy, but to restore balance. Walk wisely, my children. Walk with gratitude.